So, in order to run this activity with your kids, you need a dice, you need a sheet where they can record their answers with hundreds, tens, and units, and you need a pen for them to record their answers. In order to run this activity, you're going to take the dice, roll a number, and then record that on your answer sheet. Now, the objective is for the kids to make the largest number possible. You can vary this activity and get the kids to make the smallest number possible. It's a good idea to start with the largest. So, ideally, they'd take turns, one at a time, in order to record their answers. This way they do get to work collaboratively and socially construct their knowledge. And there are quite a few turns they can take in this, which is good because they may not always get it right the first time. And it's not so much as a competition either. There is no winner, there is no loser. It's just the kids working together to master their number and place value skills. So you should allow quite a while for the kids to finish this sheet, especially if they're taking turns. It will take a bit longer than has been shown here, but then they will. Lessons are focused around number and place value, and this does form part of the curriculum for these Year 2 students. ACARA recognised that students by the end of Year 2 should be able to group, partition and rearrange collections up to 1,000 into hundreds, tens and ones. They should also be able to recognise, model, represent and order numbers to at least 1,000. Now, this number and place value strand does form part of the mathematics curriculum and is under the sub-strand of number and algebra. Sharing is vitally important in this activity, as explained by Vygotsky in his zone of proximal development. Some students will struggle with this concept and will be in their zone of proximal development and can be pushed past their zone of proximal development into their zone of actual development by a more knowledgeable other. And if the teacher does take care in their pairing, this more knowledgeable other could in fact be the peers of the student themselves. For this lesson, you may have to gear up or gear down the lesson depending on what level your students are at. I would advise against gearing down the lesson by letting students work with lesser numbers. As viewed here, ACARA does require them to be competent with using numbers up into 1,000. So for these students, I'd recommend working closely with them or having them work with a more knowledgeable other. For those students you really want to gear up the lesson for, you can have them work into the next year level and have them working with a thousands column. You would have to make sure they're competent in this though before allowing them to apply it into the lesson. Some misconceptions that can arise from this activity are students not understanding the value of 0, i.e. not understanding that when it's put at the start of a number, it's null and void. It doesn't mean anything towards the number itself. They may also find it difficult in writing in the non-linear fashion that this activity requires of them. They may think the number automatically has to be written from left to right. With these students, the teacher will have to work closely in order to correct these misconceptions. This could be a follow-on lesson from the previous lesson. What students will need is their answer sheet, and they'll also need to cut them up into individual strips, because what they'll be doing is ordering them in ascending and descending order. This is a requirement of them by ACARA, as it states they should be comfortable ordering and reordering collections. So for students that are struggling, I would suggest keeping the hundreds, tens and units headings there and actually having them on the table, because what you want students to do is when they're ordering is to really focus on those hundreds first, as that's going to make it a bit easier for them than looking at the whole number. Obviously that's not always the case, that won't always work, as some numbers will have the same value in the hundreds column. I'd then advise students to move on to the tens column and units if need be. Having children do this, it's another thing that can be done collaboratively. They can work in pairs to do it, and for a bit more of a challenge they can mix their answers up together. That way they have more answers to organise and a bit more of a challenge. As you can see, it takes them a while to actually get organised, so this would probably be a full lesson in itself. Then you can also get the students to present their answers on a poster form and use it as a visual aid in the room. So once they've done it in ascending order, focusing on those hundreds columns, moving on to the tens if need be, you can move on to descending order.